Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast from the Healthy Dog Workshop and Healthy Dog Expo. I'm Dr. Lori Koger, and I'm thrilled today to have Dr. Rob Silver of Real Mushrooms joining us live from Colorado, right, Rob?
Absolutely. Boulder, Colorado.
Yes, excellent.
Mhm.
Rob has been a veterinarian, gosh, for a very long time.
Yes,
Uh,
over 40
a
years.
graduate of Colorado State, I believe, and
Mhm.
one of someone who I consider one of the elders of the complementary and alternative veterinary medical fields. He was one of the pioneers, having one of the first holistically inclined veterinary hospitals, I believe, in the country.
I think
Um,
so.
I think it was, yeah.
Mhm.
And one of the things I'm most excited about is he's got a book coming out. And I have to ask straight off, is it gonna be ready for the expo in April?
You know,
For
it's going to be
stamps?
it's going to be close.
Oh,
We're self-publishing it. We're in the final throes. I'm waiting for my cover design.
mhm.
It's going to be a great book. It's got 8 cases in it. It talks about the use of mushrooms, integrative medicine, cannabis, as well as conventional approaches, so that it'll help to educate the pet parent, especially when they're confronted with dealing with serious disease.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Well, I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed,
Yeah, me too.
everything goes
I'm hopeful.
smoothly. And welcome Janet, one of the members of my team, who's coming to us from Northern New York, and
Okay.
Julie, who says, "Hooray for mushrooms." Thank you
Yay.
for doing this. Yes. This is awesome. Before we dive into mushrooms, we've got to talk about the elephant in the room today
Yeah.
that is broken all over social media. Uh, Most of you probably who are out there on any of the platforms have seen that a owner of a small pet food company, a keto-oriented pet food company, is leading a class action suit against Hills, the Morris Animal Foundation, Mark Morris Institute, I believe it's called, and some of the doctors who were instrumental in fueling the fire of grain-free diets causing dilated cardiomyopathy. What's your take, Rob? What do you think?
Well, I think that I think it's a good thing that this is happening. And I think it also is an expression of the maturity of the pet parent's consciousness as far as understanding more about the problems associated with very highly processed commercial food, especially the kibble, and the claims that the pet food companies are making, which aren't really entirely truthful about their food.
And maybe not even truthful, but going beyond that,
I'm
downright
trying to be,
deceitful.
I'm trying to be
I'll
kind.
say it. I'll say it.
Okay.
No, I mean, some of these things and claims that the differences between claims that are made on the label, claims at a website, claims in a blog post. You can put pictures of filet mignon steak on the bag, but inside it's meat meal reconstituted with water. I mean,
Right.
it's downright deceitful, and that is totally legal to put those beautiful pictures on the cover or
Hmm.
the packaging and not in the food.
Well, I
So
think the pet food industry is in collusion, or it's not with with the regulatory agencies as well, and
mhm,
in order to create this this business model that
yeah,
promotes the uniqueness of this food that really is not that unique.
well, and let's be honest, it really isn't food. It's technically termed feed or feed grade because most of those cannot be eaten by humans. And food is something that is fit for human consumption.
True.
But it's going to be interesting to follow this along and
Yeah.
see, where it goes, how much of the claims get substantiated in court. As I understand it, the compensatory money that they're asking for is $2.6 billion.
Oh, that's good.
And then beyond that, they're asking for all the other things you ask for. So it totals out to about $10 billion.
Holy cow!
Holy cow.
Holy
But
cow!
when you think about the companies that were literally put out of business by these claims, that supposedly, if you believe the lawsuit, are founded on some pretty shaky science and some manipulated science. I mean, people lost their businesses. It's serious stuff. I urge you all to go read the actual document to as much detail as you want. It's 124 pages. But if you read the first 5, you'll get a lot. You can find it at healthydogworkshop.com. Just scroll down, it's the top blog post. So just had to acknowledge that. But we're really here today to talk about mushrooms, which have been your passion, being with the Real Mushroom Company for many years now.
Mhm.
Um, for our listeners who are brand new to mushrooms, where would you like to start with them? What do they really need to know?
Well, I think first of all, I want to make it clear that when we talk about mushrooms, we're not talking about psilocybin. We're talking about mushrooms that most of which are also eaten as food, but have medicinal properties. So we're talking about shiitake and reishi and lion's mane. And a lot of them have gotten very prominent headlines for human use, like lion's mane, for instance, for stress and memory. It's the most popular mushroom in North America because we're
Really?
pretty stressed and we're having memory issues. Well, many of our dogs also, have those problems, especially as they get older. We've got the canine cognitive disorder where sometimes they can't
Of
even
course.
find food bowl. So that's kind of where I want to start. And there's some things people need to know about mushrooms, which is um, that in order to get the best benefits from a mushroom, if you're looking at a fresh mushroom, it needs to be cooked. It needs to be cooked for at least 15 minutes to 30 minutes to break down that fibrous cell wall, which then releases all the secret sauce and the goodies that the
Mhm.
mushrooms have. Working with a company that is already extracting or breaking down the mushrooms using a hot water extraction process will save you a step and is more likely to give you the highest return in terms of the actives in that mushroom compound. So that's what Real Mushrooms does as a company. We cultivate our mushrooms under USDA organic standards, and then
Mm.
we process them according to the appropriate tradition using a hot water extraction for all of our mushrooms. And then for our reishi, which is known for its high level of triterpenes, which are alcohol solvent, not water solvent, we do what's called a dual extraction, where we use both hot water and alcohol to get the optimum amount of all the actives there. So I've been
And then
working
I would
on.
imagine you measure how much you have in.
Well, yeah, our products are standardized to their
Yeah.
beta glucan content, and the beta glucan is probably the major marker active compound in mushrooms. So I've created dosing algorithms using the beta glucan content of the mushroom, and then measuring the weight of the animal and using that to calculate the appropriate dosage based on the severity of the condition we're addressing. So I've been working on developing dosing strategies and
Mhm.
applications for pet parents, and also trying to teach veterinarians, because I know many pet parents, when they go back to their vet and tell them what they're doing, the vet looks at them like they're crazy. And if the veterinarian, and so I'm trying to educate the veterinarians as well, because they're important partners in your pet's
Yeah.
health, and we just need to get them to, raise their consciousness a little bit around these natural therapies.
Without a doubt. And one of the things we spoke about off camera is the quality of ingredients and integrity of the ingredients. And it's so easy to find cheap supplements of all types.
Well,
But to find
it is.
quality ones like Real Mushrooms and some others that really standardize things, their processes are the quality control is tracked. That's huge.
Well, for
Huge.
the quality of the Real Mushrooms extracts, I think people are getting a really good deal. They're really not very high priced, very
Mhm.
accessible. They're available for humans as well. They're available in bulk powders, large
Oh,
capsules,
wow.
small capsules. We've got soft chews. We've got scoopable powders now. We've got a brand new scoopable powder product called the Daily Dog that's gotten a lot of traction lately. And so those are the ways that we try to be sure that we're giving a good quality product to
Yeah,
our pet.
and available for essentially all species. You have, I would
Oh yeah,
imagine, products that can be used on horses and other.
In fact, I've been working with a couple of vets using cordyceps, looking at equine Cushing's
Oh,
PPID,
that's a huge
and we're
problem.
starting to see some benefits with that. They're going to be
Absolutely.
measuring ACTH and insulin, and then they started in January. Then we're going to recheck in April, and
Mhm.
and hopefully we'll get some documentation as far as the benefit of the cordyceps. Cordyceps is an adaptogen, so it has a direct relationship with the adrenal glands and the pituitary gland that communicates with the adrenal glands in terms of that whole
Mhm.
stress thing.
Yeah, and you do have a protocol, I believe, for Cushing's in dogs?
I'm developing that as
Developing
well.
that too?
I'm really very evidence based, and although I can work theoretically with what research has been done with laboratory animals with humans, I much prefer to have some evidence to use, and so I'm also looking to recruit some canine Cushing's patients and to do another
Oh,
study, and we're also looking to recruit some cats with chronic kidney disease because cordyceps also is very protective for the kidney. To me, it's my favorite mushroom. If you
mhm.
haven't figured that one out, it's also very tasty. So as a powder, it's very easy for most cats to accept it if they will accept wet food. And I know there's some cats that are total junk food junkies and are
Yeah.
addicted to the dry food. You can't get them to switch. But for those that can switch, it would be a great medicine. And we're looking into making into something more palatable, maybe using some krill meal to enhance its flavor. So we have a scoopable powder for cats. Working on a couple of different levels there. Having a lot of fun designing these products for the pets. It's
It
really
sounds like it,
it, yeah.
I'm sure you guys can just feel his passion for these mushrooms
I
and
like
and
I
what they
like
can
cooking
accomplish.
and I like cooking, and so making these formulas is very much like cooking.
Yeah. Since you kind of mentioned kidney disease,
Hmm.
a couple people have had questions, and I'll share with you that my 13-year-old dog has some degree of kidney disease,
Okay.
and he's doing well. Um, Dietary manipulation, of course, he's been a raw-fed dog all his life.
Hmm.
And Dr. Kendra Pope, who we were talking to prior, uh, is kind of managing him with
Oh,
some
good.
magic. But let's talk about specifically
Yes.
mushrooms for kidney disease.
Hmm. Well, the mushroom that I would recommend specifically for kidney disease would be the cordyceps mushroom, because and there's several studies. Most of them are with experimentally induced kidney disease, experimental animals, but where we have seen cordyceps lower creatinine levels and improve quality of life. And because it is tasty, it's more likely to get it into the kitty cat. I think one of the challenges with treating cats is, of course, the fact that they're unique animals. They're not just little dogs, and you have to
Mhm.
pay attention to their metabolism. But the other is their acceptance of these supplements, and you're not. It's not going to work if someone has to chase their cat every day down and
Right.
kill them twice. It may work for a couple of weeks, but for the rest of the life of the animal, not. If it's a nice powder you can put in with some of their healthy food, it's good. And so I would suggest that, especially for your dog, to give it a try. And we'll
Mhm.
get you set up. We'll send you some bulk powder so you can get started with that, Lori. And I'd
Yeah.
love to
Well,
hear
thank
back from you on that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Currently he's on, 2 Chinese herbal products and some stinging nettle tincture,
Nice.
as well as, the
Mhm.
core healthy stuff,
Yeah.
omega-3s, etcetera,
Yeah.
and of course, food manipulation.
The,
Um
the other the other mushroom, sorry, the other mushroom that I would also recommend, not as much for kidney, but more for bladder, kidney bladder,
Mhm.
UTIs, and oftentimes UTIs can travel north up to the kidneys, is
Sure.
chaga. And
Ah,
chaga is an interesting mushroom. It's actually the knot mushroom because it isn't, you don't get to see the cap of the stalk. It's actually mycelium, the chaga mycelium that has grown into the bark of the birch tree, and it only grows in northern latitudes. Might grow as far south as northern New York, possibly,
mhm.
but we do tend to see it more like in Siberia and Finland and Canada, growing on birch trees. But especially for like urinary tract infections, it has been shown to be pretty darn good.
There is, for those of you in Inside Scoop, there is video back a ways of Rodney B. and Karen harvesting some
Oh,
chaga
okay,
birch trees.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah, and Rodney's up there,
you're
way
up
up.
in Nova Scotia, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha. Hmm.
Well, and he's up a tree too. It's really
Oh, okay, yeah,
it's
that sounds
highly
like Rodney.
entertaining. Um, but that's interesting to know, and it is only birch trees that it will grow on, correct?
I think that it will also infect trees that are very closely related to the birch tree.
Mhm. Um, oh, and here we have So one of my able assistants, Diane,
Hmm.
Janet, Janet harvests them in northern New York.
Yeah, it's a very powerful
Yeah.
product for sure. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, he developed cancer when he was in the Gulag, and
Oh,
then he cured himself with the chaga, and then
yeah,
wrote about it in his next book, Cancer Ward.
yeah.
So it does have
Well,
a long history of use.
that's a nice transition because one of the things I'm most familiar with, and conventional veterinarians even know, is the use of mushrooms, specifically turkey tail,
Yes.
for canine cancer, hemangiosarcoma,
Hmm.
most commonly. Can you speak to that?
Um,
And just, cancer and mushrooms in general, or turkey tail
well, I think
specifically?
when people do get that terrible diagnosis of cancer, one of the first things they think about is getting onto a mushroom. And I think all mushrooms, because they contain the beta glucans and because they have other molecules in them, these terpenes and whatnot, like chaga has, all have anti-cancer properties. Turkey tail has the highest concentration of beta glucans and the highest concentration and the largest variety of triterpenes, all of which have anti-neoplastic properties. So turkey tail historically has oftentimes been the choice of mushrooms, and it grows widely all around the planet, not just limited to certain latitudes. So we have a lot of experience using it. In the mid 1980s, a Chinese company found a way to grow the mycelium for the turkey tail in a liquid culture, and they were able to pharmaceutically extract from the mycelium growing in the liquid culture, because they could separate the liquid from the mycelium, this beta glucan bound to a protein extract, which is what's called PSP. And it's the PSP extract that's in the immunity. And all the research on turkey tail and cancer since the mid 1980s, when they developed this patented single product, has been with this patented single product, because that's what medical science wants to
Yeah.
isolate the variables. Mushrooms have too many things in them for a totally objective study to be done. So the
Mhm.
immunity works really well. It's costly, and many of the same beneficial ingredients that we find, some of the same effectiveness that we find with the PSP would also be found using the mushroom itself if you give it at a substantially higher dosage. But we don't have the evidence-based studies to support that yet. So that's another thing I'm looking to do, is recruit,
Yeah.
is kind of look to recruit, a multi-centered study with
Right.
turkey tail itself, or even better, we have our Real Mushrooms has a blended product called the Five Defenders, which has turkey tail in it and has reishi, has maitake, shiitake, and chaga. So I actually recommend something like that, which is a kind of a multifactorial type of a product, because we see synergy when you put several different mushroom
Yeah.
species together. They all work together in the body in a much more synergistic way. But it's getting the dosage to be right. And in Chinese medicine, when they use dosing for mushrooms for severe cases, they talk about like 9 grams of the dried powder. That's not the powder that's been extracted. So we're recommending a pretty high dosage as well, and we've got some dosage guidelines for that, to help people get a dosage that's a good place for their pet. It's not a drug. Mushrooms take time to work up, and
Right.
so really, I almost hesitate using the word dosage, because it's more of a functional food, and you don't really talk about dosages of foods per se. But we just want to get enough beta glucans in there based on the weight and the severity of the problem. But any mushroom really has great
Right.
anti-cancer properties, like maitake. There's several studies by the Japanese company that created the maitake diffraction liquid in dogs with lymphoma and other types of cancers, found that there was activity against these canine cancer cells in vitro with their maitake mushroom beta glucan extract. We have just launched a single extract of maitake and added that to our range of products, for that very reason, because maitake is so powerful as an anti-neoplastic agent as well. Maitake and turkey tail, that might be a nice
Yeah, that
blend.
might be a nice combination.
Yeah, there's all sorts of ways you can go.
Yeah. There were a couple questions back, and I
Hmm.
know Melissa,
Yeah,
uh,
let's do them.
Dr. Silver indirectly answered your question about five defenders, but
Hmm.
using mushrooms preventatively or proactively.
Hmm.
I have a 1-year-old golden retriever, and we know the golden retriever's propensity towards cancer, hypothyroidism, cardiac disease,
Yes.
etc. Is five defenders your general choice for
For most things,
proactive?
it is my go-to. It doesn't have the cordyceps in it, so if I'm talking about some of the conditions that cordyceps addresses, we would use the cordyceps separately. But no, because it has that synergy. It's got the maitake, it's got the chaga, it's got
Yep.
the turkey tail. It's really a good choice for almost anything. And it's just a matter of getting the right dosage of that in there.
Yeah. Now, Ruffian, um, this this is an interesting question and one I had not thought of. But certainly we see mold in pet foods, we see mold in everything. What kind of precautions do you take to avoid mold contamination, or how do you handle it?
Well,
Growing and
yeah, well, we don't see mold contamination in our products. Mold oftentimes needs something to grow on, like
yeah,
grain. We don't have grain in our products at all. Um, and although some other products that call themselves mushrooms will have quite a bit of grain in them, and mushrooms are fungi, just like mold is, but it's a different type of fungus. And so the mushroom itself has, and things like penicillin are created by
mhm,
fungi as well. These antibacterial types of products, but the fungi also create anti-mold constituents because they compete with the food for the mold, so they get rid of so they
yeah,
that's how they can eliminate the mold. So no, it is not a problem. And if you do suffer from exposure to mold, mushrooms are a great solution. We do get some customer service questions about, because mushrooms are fungi and they have, a candida, or they have, some other type of mold based, fungal based pathogen in them. Is there a reason to maybe not use the mushrooms? I call it fighting fire with fire. Here's a fungus that's going to fight the good fungus is going to fight the bad fungus. If that helps,
that
Ruffy.
that makes sense. She's kind of questioning whether uh, mushrooms grow in moldy conditions, and I guess
Well,
my
yeah.
question: when you're commercially growing mushrooms,
Hmm.
what substrates are commonly used to grow them on?
Well, mushrooms are grown initially on grain. That's where the mycelium grows on the grain. Then it completely myceliates the grain. We then grow the mushroom depending on what its natural substrate is. So we have wood-loving mushrooms, which we grow on either on logs, or
Mhm,
stumps, or what they're doing now to increase production even more is they're using sawdust or wood chips, and they're putting
mhm.
them in bags and growing it in those bags. So they
Oh,
grow on the natural substrate, and when they grow on the natural substrate, they also have the optimal potency from all the ingredients that are in that substrate. Like chaga needs that birch tree because it's
right.
got it gathers ingredients out of the birch tree that have good biological activity, like some of the triterpenes, the betulinic acid, for instance. But mushrooms and mold may grow under similar conditions, but in the commercial growing of our mushrooms, that just doesn't happen. We can identify that. So we're very proud of the quality of our products. They undergo extensive testing, including testing for mycotoxins, as well as solvents and pesticides and herbicides and heavy metals. And so we're certain this is a very clean product, and it's used by a lot of human practitioners for their patients, and more veterinarians are using it for their patients because it is such a clean product.
Yeah. And of course you are organic certified,
We
correct?
are. We are. Hmm.
This. There we go.
Hmm.
Um, so Diane was asking about rotation of mushrooms. And is five defenders good to use daily? I think we already covered that.
Yeah.
But
They're,
would
they're,
you?
Yeah, there's no need to rotate, but you can. They won't hurt, and it depends what you're treating as well. You
Mhm.
wouldn't, if you've got a kidney disease patient, you're not going to rotate out of the cordyceps.
Sure.
But some people have gotten into this. This approach has been promoted in the natural health space of maybe so many days on, then giving the animal a break, and then
Mhm.
going back again. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, because what I wanted to say about mushrooms that's really cool about their influence on the immune system is that we've learned that the beta glucans in mushrooms can train the immune system to work better and to work
Ooh.
faster and work longer. And we're used to there's two types of immune systems. There's an innate immune system and an acquired immune system. And in the acquired immune system, it identifies a specific pathogen and then mounts antibodies against it. In the innate immune system, it doesn't identify that pathogen, but when you train the immune system with the beta glucan, it actually it gives the innate immune system some memory of prior exposure to pathogens, and it does that through stem cells in the bone marrow. It's fascinating how that
Well,
works.
there's a whole lot of science involved
Oh
here.
my gosh, yeah. So we train the immune system using these mushrooms, and as long as you're getting those beta glucans in them, it's good. And I don't think it's wrong to rotate. I just don't think you necessarily have to.
Yeah. I think we're encouraged to rotate both, our fresh food feeders,
Mhm.
and we just subscribe to rotation automatically.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and I use, like for instance, if I know I'm traveling,
yeah.
I'll probably take a higher level of something like a turkey tail or a chaga
Mhm.
because of its anti-infective properties, and
Yeah.
and so I'll switch things around based on what I need to do for myself.
Yeah, and, I would think the same thing of a dog perhaps that's going to be boarded
Yes.
or is taking the family vacation, etcetera.
Yeah.
Um, Janet has an interesting question that probably applies to a lot of, the pet dogs out there
Hmm.
with some liver stress.
Well, a number of mushrooms have been found to be hepatoprotective and to be able to support healthy liver function. One of those is reishi, the Ganoderma lucidum mushroom. Another one is cordyceps. I've seen maitake also having, protective benefits. So for the liver. So those are three mushrooms that are in the five defenders. Which is again why the five defenders is such a it's our most popular product, for both humans and for pets. So I would suggest that, personally, I would go with some sort of a milk thistle product, and
Mhm.
I would probably just do the reishi directly. The reishi and the cordyceps are really my two faves, and that's what I take for myself. They're both true adaptogens in terms of their ability to protect the adrenal glands.
Yeah, well, and definitely protect the liver, folks,
Oh, for sure.
because, the drugs and such, as you may or may not know, I work part-time in a conventional practice doing what I do.
Hmm.
So, my conventional colleagues are often in adjacent exam rooms doing things that would not be my choice. But the amount of, medications, pesticides, drugs that some dogs are subjected to is
Crazy.
mind-boggling,
It's crazy. Hmm.
especially GI dogs
Hmm.
and, pancreatitis dogs, chronic vomiting dogs. They're on an antacid for whatever reason. They're on Serenia or some other anti-nausea med. They may be on metronidazole. They may be on what I would consider an inappropriate diet, and other things. And it's like, what are you doing to the microbiome? You're trashing it. You're just totally trashing it. And somehow these dogs manage to survive. But I would imagine if I could put in their hands a mushroom to support the microbiome, that we might be able to offset some of that damage, right?
Mushrooms do support the microbiome. It's the mushroom fiber in particular, the beta glucans, and then the chitin, because chitin is a very strong fibrous element in the fungal
Mhm.
cell wall, along with the beta glucans. And the chitin, if you remember, is a precursor to glucosamine. And so the chitin in the bowel gets broken down and transformed into a form of glucosamine called N-acetyl D-glucosamine, which we use a lot for inflammatory bowel disease. It helps to heal those tight junctions. It's not the same glucosamine that we use for joints, although it could work for that. It's much better used for GI stuff. So that's where the mushroom fiber is so important. And what we've done with our pet product line is to use what we call the one-to-one extracts. And in the one-to-one extracts, what we do is we basically use the hot water extract to deconstruct the mushroom to pull out all the goodies, and we have left a lot of fiber that doesn't have the goodies in it. We put them back together. So you get the extracted mushroom with all the bioavailable beta-glucans and triterpenes and nucleosides and everything, flavonoids and phenols and everything else. And then you get the fiber too, which is microbiome friendly. And the beta-glucan in the fiber actually helps to regulate the microbiome as well by knocking down the pathogenic strains in the microbiome and supporting the healthier ones. So yes, mushrooms definitely for the microbiome. And we've just launched a new product called the Daily Dog. It's brand new, and it has the type of probiotic in it called Saccharomyces boulardii, which has been shown to be helpful with leaky gut and with antibiotic-associated diarrhea and a variety of things. And it's a yeast-based probiotic, which means it's not temperature sensitive. So this can be kept at room temperature. But this also has 7 different mushrooms in it, all one-to-one, including the cordyceps and the lion's mane, as well as the 5 defenders. It has seaweed in it and seaweed extracts. And so this is really meant to build the microbiome as a once-a-day meal topper. And so
so that might be something that the dog with a touchy GI tract is taking, or
yeah, well, and I do a lot of GI work. In fact, I'm doing a workshop in 2 weeks for Pet Summit on healing gut health and gut health and allergies, the relationship between them. It's a 4-hour workshop on 2 separate days. Yeah. And I use a lot of supplements too. I mean, you talked about all the drugs that you might be using with a GI patient, and I'm thinking, well, gee, but I'm also recommending I don't recommend the drugs, but I recommend a lot of supplements, the glutamine and the digestive enzymes and the probiotics and maybe an herbal formula to help regulate bowel and, that sort of stuff.
These are all things that I look at as supportive and nourishing compared to drugs, which are often trying to shut down some sort of process.
I agree. And the GI tract, it's not just like one thing. It's multi. It's got so many different parts to it that you need to have different supplements to address each of the different parts, of the gut.
And I mean, I personally become a huge fan of digestive enzymes.
Oh, yes.
Because so many of these dogs, and especially when we're switching them from kibble to a fresh food, they need that help. Their body is not making the enzymes that they need. And providing it in a supplement form makes all the difference.
Well, the best digestive enzymes, by the way, are derived from fungal sources, Aspergillus niger. Yeah, the digestive enzymes from fungal sources have the widest range of activity over a wide range of temperatures and a wide range of pHs, whereas the fruit-based ones like papaya and bromelain, those tend to be very sensitive to temperature and pH, and the pancreatic enzymes really are really most effective only when you have a problem with your pancreas not creating enough of them. That's what I think in my work.
Yeah. Well, and the rate of pancreatitis in the I'm going to say conventionally fed dog is so high, and cats as well. And these dogs come into the hospital, and the cats too, for that matter, they are really sick animals.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, perhaps if they weren't eating ultra processed food and things that, just shouldn't be eaten, we'd have something different and without support. I would say, and your experience may bear this out, that the average kibble feeder is not buying a bunch of supplements, save perhaps a joint support product that they're buying at their vet from a certain company that makes a bunch of them.
Yeah. One of the treatments that we found for chronic pancreatitis not when it's active, but when it's things are a little bit settled down, is the use of antioxidants. And there's several studies that show that antioxidants have a very protective effect on future flare-ups of the pancreas. And
Mhm.
mushrooms are very rich in antioxidants. They're rich in microbiome-friendly fiber. And two mushrooms, chaga again, and lion's mane, before we found out about their effectiveness for cancer or fermentation, they were used for GI problems, especially upper
Really?
GI problems. Yeah, so both of those would be good, or either one of them would be
Mhm.
good for your patient with pancreatitis.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always start them with digestive enzymes and, and of course,
Absolutely.
you change,
Yeah.
but I will have to try that.
Check it out. Yeah.
Um, Another person had asked about, mushrooms being safe for dogs with food allergies or sensitivities
Hmm.
and such. Can you elaborate on that?
I can. Food allergies or food sensitivities, depending which antibody reaction you're talking about, can really be sensitive to anything. So I really strongly recommend testing first and seeing if there's any evidence of sensitivity to to fungi or mushrooms, on the testing, and even sometimes the tests themselves aren't that accurate in terms of you might get
You
false
have a preferred
negatives.
one?
I prefer Dr. Jean Dodd's NutriScan. I think that's the most accurate. I know there's a couple of others out there, and I've tried to figure out what they're doing, and I'm
I
not going
I
to put anything down. I just don't understand what
yeah.
their testing methodology is.
I've
Um,
had excellent results with Nutriscan.
Oh yeah, incredible results. So I also suggest, in addition to running that test to see if there's any sensitivity to mushrooms or fungi, to when you go to try a mushroom,
Mhm,
always start with a very small amount, especially if you've got an animal who's allergic or reactive to things. And
mhm.
start with very small, eighth of a teaspoon, 16th of a teaspoon. We generally recommend about an eighth of a teaspoon of the powder per 10 pounds of body weight per day. Could be divided BID just for basic wellness. But you might want to use a little more, in that regards.
Mhm.
Or start at that low level or even lower to be sure with your allergic patient that they're not going to have a reaction to it. And most of the time we don't hear anything anecdotally about reactions to mushrooms. Some animals are sensitive to them. Some humans are sensitive to them. There's several papers that have been published about this shiitake mushroom hypersensitivity,
Mhm.
and if the mushroom spores, because they're pollen-like, might be more likely to be antigenic, than the mushroom fruiting body. Um, and mycelium, if it's in a mushroom product that's been grown on, that is basically based in mycelium that's been grown on grain, then you're going to have issues with the grain that's in the product.
Great.
And I guess, I wanted to kind of explain this to
Yeah.
your
Our listeners.
viewers, that that the there's many companies in the U.S., many of them that are quite well regarded, who don't grow mushrooms, but they grow mycelium on grain. And then they take that myceliated grain and they dry it and powder it and they put it in a jar and call that a mushroom, or they call that lion's mane. And it has much, maybe 20% of the beta glucan content, probably none of the triterpenes, which are one of the most potent parts of lion's mane. So beware of that. I've done a study in which I bought 10 products off the internet that said they had turkey tail for pets in them, and then I analyzed them for grain, starch, and for beta glucans. And of those 10 products, only 4 of them were actually from actual mushrooms. And 2 of them were real mushrooms products, and 2 of them were products that are supplied by our parent company, Namex, that actually grows the mushrooms.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to mislabel, I'll call it.
Buyer beware. And
Buyer beware.
but they can be
And
certain with real mushrooms that what they're getting is, that's what we call it,
is
real
there, like,
mushrooms.
as there is with CBD, is there any, certificate of analysis or anything that a consumer should ask for with mushrooms?
There's nothing that's regulated in that regards. I suggest that first of all look at the label and see if the label says there's mycelium in it. If it says there's mycelium in it, it probably is a mycelium on grain product. They
Mhm.
might use the word biomass, which is what their
Right.
euphemistic way of saying rice, or rye or wheat or whatever that might be.
Mhm.
Um, and look for those things. They might say there's some fruiting bodies in there or primordia, but generally those are so low that, as we found in my analysis, that it just doesn't account for much in terms of the beta glucan content at all. So,
Yeah. That's really interesting, and
but
I'm sure it correlates somewhat with price.
well, it does. I would also have the pet parent go to the label and find a contact number for the company, as we suggest they do with the pet foods and everything
Sure,
else, because
sure.
you really need to be an informed consumer about the stuff. Call them up and say, hey, do you grow mushrooms or do you just grow mycelium on grain? And they'll kind of, oh, well, we have mushrooms growing out of our mycelium on grain, but they're, I mean, my study shows that there's not much there at all. I'm presenting it next week, by the way,
Oh,
at the
interesting.
International Mushroom Science Society conference in Vegas. So I'm excited about that.
Vegas, baby.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No
I
comment.
know I know you're such a man at the craps table.
Well,
Force of nature.
I'd really rather flush my money down the toilet than gamble. I think it's a better use of it.
It's a better use, absolutely. I want to jump subjects because Jen had a question
Sure.
about seizures, which is something I hadn't considered.
Hmm.
Can you speak to neurologic things and mushrooms?
I would. Yes. I wouldn't consider a mushroom to be a standalone seizure medication, but I think as
Mhm.
part of a multifactorial program that maybe also includes some CBD, maybe depending on the severity of the problem and the frequency, possibly even some pharmaceuticals, because
Mhm.
epilepsy can be a pretty nasty thing, and they can die from it. We don't want that to happen. It's a quality of life issue. But if we can
Right.
control the seizures and then bring into that supplements that may allow us to lower the dosage of the seizure medication so there's less impact on the liver, is good. So mushrooms that I would recommend for seizures are mushrooms that are known to have a settling effect on the nervous system. And actually most mushrooms do have some settling effect, but the ones that have the most settling effect would be reishi and lion's mane specifically. So using those mushrooms at a moderate dosage, moderate to high dosage, along with your seizure medicine, with your
Mhm.
acupuncture, with your Chinese herbs, with your taurine, with everything else you're doing, your fish oil, your high doses of fatty acids, those sorts of things, I think will help with it. We don't have objective studies to support that, but that's my assumption based on what I've been reading.
I mean, it makes sense to me.
Mhm.
Um, oh, and Diane wants to know, when you come to the Healthy Dog Expo, you are bringing product, right?
We will have product. The selling the product directly at the Healthy Dog Expo was something that we balked at the first year that
Yeah,
we were there. We're a Canadian company. It's a little complicated doing
yeah,
that sales thing, but we'll discuss how we can do that.
figure out how to do that. And of course, people can order right off your website.
Oh, absolutely, we'll have that capability for them. Yeah.
So, whether you order now or whether you order at the event,
Hmm.
we'll do our best to make it easy for you.
Absolutely.
Um, and a little feedback for us on the seizure topic.
Okay, what does it say?
Colleen uses 5 Defenders and or Lion's Mane and
Hmm.
CBD. Uh,
Okay,
good to know.
and it's helped. Good. Well, that supports what I said.
Yeah,
Thank you,
exactly.
Colleen, for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And, and Joni's chiming in too.
Oh yeah,
If you wanna order today, we have a discount for you,
nice. And
and
I do have that code here.
do have the code, and
Hmm.
what is it? One of my
Well,
team will
HDE uppercase 25. And that'll give them a 25% off discount on all Real Mushrooms products. Hmm.
it's
HDE 25.
about to show up 5 times in the comments.
Yeah.
Look at it go, there's several of it there.
Wow.
Um,
Cool. Well, that's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's 25% off, that is huge, people. That is
Hmm.
huge.
Well, we
Uh,
think it's really important to, I mean, and there's a lot of competition these days, and we really, without too much arrogance, we really do think we're the best out there. And we want to give people,
yeah.
and I think once people try it and interface with our great customer service and all of our educational materials,
Mhm.
they'll realize we're a great company to stick
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and reaching the consumer and educating the consumer directly, as
with.
well as your efforts with the vets,
Yes,
that's something that sets good companies in any field apart
this
or
is true.
any aspect of our field.
This is true.
Um, everybody else seems to just be selling product.
Yeah, just selling
And
poop.
that's yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes literally.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, actually, these days,
these
talk to
days, yes,
Margot.
yes, without a doubt,
Hmm.
without a doubt. So let's see, just check my other questions here. Um, I think we've covered a lot
Well,
now.
Janet asks about diabetes. Maybe we could talk
Oh, I
about that a
missed
little
that.
bit.
Let's talk about that. I'm sure the fiber is helpful.
Fiber is very helpful, but the mushrooms also have a direct effect on regulating blood glucose. And so, maitake is one mushroom that has shown particularly good benefits with that. But all mushrooms can also help the diabetic to better regulate their insulin, their blood glucose, whether they're using insulin or some other approach to that. So, it's good for diabetes. There's a wide range of applications for mushrooms because they are such superfoods. They have so many
Yeah.
incredibly active ingredients in them.
I think of all the diabetic cats that we see now.
Yeah.
When you and I left vet school, uh, it was diabetic dogs and the occasional diabetic cat,
Hmm.
and now it's totally flipped.
Well, it's all the grain in
Of
their
course,
food. Too much
moving to an
carbohydrate.
obligate carnivore.
Hmm.
Um, but some of these cats are almost impossible to regulate, whether you're using NPH insulin, zinc, PZI, or we're using a lot of Lantus, the glargine insulin.
Yeah, if you can get them early, sometimes that works.
Sometimes that works, and now they're coming out with oral hypoglycemic agents that are more effective, supposedly.
Hmm.
But how would I dose, your average 10 or 12 pound, well, it's diabetic, so it's 12 or 14
Hmm.
pounds of cat.
Well, because we're talking about a cat and we're trying to dose them, and we don't want to throw them off their food,
We're starting with this much, right?
that'd be the first thing that we'd worry about. Is we'd probably want to use the cordyceps, or the lion's mane, simply
Mhm.
because they're more palatable and more likely to get into the cat. But some cats will take some more bitter substances as well. So my recommendation would be to look at about an eighth of a teaspoon per cat. That's about per 10 pounds of body weight. uh,
Mhm.
with each meal as a place to start. Anytime we have a diabetic cat, especially if we've got relative stability in their blood glucose levels, anything you add, even if it's not has a high glycemic index, it has a low glycemic index rather, might
Mhm.
throw off their regulation. So I always recommend starting low and then rechecking blood glucose like in a week to make sure you're doing okay. And then you could kind of creep it up to the next tier, maybe an eighth of a teaspoon once a day, then go to an eighth of a teaspoon each meal. And then, if you want to try and bump it a little more to a quarter of a teaspoon, you can try that.
Mhm.
The doses aren't etched in stone. These are starting points that I think will be good based on the potency of the active ingredients in the mushroom itself.
Yeah, because I would love to try, because some of these owners are desperate, and, as Janet mentioned, she has a friend who feeds crap kibble, and some of these cats, of course, they don't wanna get stuck with a needle, and if you've ever worked with a cat that doesn't wanna cooperate, it's not always a pleasant scenario, shall we say.
Well,
So anything we can do to
mhm.
lessen that will be great.
Most of these cats, they're type 2 diabetics, and I have found that oftentimes just switching them over to like an almost like a 90% raw meat diet, and
Oh, yeah,
maybe just a little bit of fiber, like some pumpkin or some
sure.
squash, is a great. Oftentimes has gotten them to have better regulated glucose without the use of insulin.
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes they'll spontaneously come
Yeah,
out of the diabetic
I
state.
know that's great when that happens, isn't it?
Oh, it's great, except when the patient arrives at your door with a BG of 40 because the owner didn't realize and is still giving insulin.
Oh,
But it's an easy fix.
it is a little bit of sugar, a little
Um,
bit of Caro.
Jennifer has a little different perspective.
Okay.
Since we're on the fresh is always better,
Hmm.
should she be sharing her mushrooms with her dog?
The issue with eating fresh mushrooms is that they need to be cooked, and they need to be cooked sufficiently long to break down that fibrous cell wall so that you actually can get some value from eating it. Because fresh mushrooms are 90% water, in order to get the same amount, if you're just using this for wellness, sure, that's fine. But if you
Yeah.
really have a condition you want to address, it's a lot of mushrooms, especially if you're giving it to a cat, to get that freshly in there. And that's where this concentrated powder, that has all the goodies in it is good. There's
Yes.
nothing wrong with feeding it, but
Yeah.
just cook it first. Some mushrooms, even the button mushrooms, have some substances in them called agarotines, which are toxic until they're cooked. So those raw mushrooms you get on the salad bar, those are
Mhm.
button mushrooms that are raw. They really need to be cooked, and need to be cooked at least 15 minutes.
And
Uh,
by cooking, saute, steam, whatever?
Sauteing, boiling, probably the best format for a mushroom would be like a soup or a
Oh,
stew. And also, if you can dice the mushroom up very small, that allows it to cook through and through. It also makes it more digestible because they don't have to, because most animals don't chew that much anyway.
sure.
Um, and if you've ever tasted a fresh mushroom, Jennifer, and you know how slimy that can be, and that sliminess is actually the chitin in the mushroom
Mhm.
fiber wall, which is very similar to the glucosamine. You know how glucosamine is kind of slimy, slippery as well, and it's that slippery nature of the chitin that actually is going to help with the microbiome and the
Wow.
digestion.
What about putting, cutting up your button mushrooms or what have you, and when you're making your own bone broth?
Absolutely. That's a
That would be
great place. Great
close
for
to.
mushrooms because, yeah, they'll boil for, a couple of hours, which really is best. What our company does when we're heat processing is we heat them to about 90 degrees centigrade, just a little less than boiling, for 2 hours. And that's enough to break down the cell wall. And then we dry it and we concentrate it and we extract and then we package it and we measure it to standardize the amount. And I said that earlier. And I don't know if I really made enough of a point of it. Is that we standardize our product so that a bottle you buy this year is going to have the same beta glucan content as a bottle you buy next year. So it keeps the therapy consistent in terms of
Yeah.
the potency of what you're giving, and it's something that I think the human practitioners and the veterinary practitioners like because it makes it more of a medical product if you can have consistency of dosing.
Mhm. Yeah. Let's do one last question because I know
Okay.
we're winding up on our
Oh,
time.
it's over already.
Over already.
Hmm.
So, mushroom relaxed chews.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite formulas, one of our most popular formulas. I'm having a lot of fun making these
I
things.
can tell. I can
The, the,
tell.
the, the chews contain reishi and lion's mane. Reishi is used by Zen masters to help as a meditation aid because it's so calming. In Chinese medicine, we say it calms the shen, it calms the heart, calms the brain because the brain and the heart, the mind and the heart are considered to be connected in Chinese medicine. It has the lion's mane, which has definite, stress resolving properties. But I also put tryptophan in there, which is a
Oh,
precursor to serotonin, theanine, which is what gives green tea its zen, plus taurine, which also has a beneficial effect on calming. And then it's got catnip, and cats actually like these chews. Catnip and
wow.
valerian root, lemon balm, and passion flower. So the herbs and the tryptophan give an immediate calming effect because mushrooms do take some time to build up, but then the mushrooms will have more of an effect over time. So I give this to my dog who has PTSD. He's a rescue dog, and I combine it with CBD. There's no CBD in this formula, and real mushrooms isn't going to get involved with CBD
Mhm.
because of BS, and
Right.
they're a Canadian company. But if you were to combine it with CBD in a particularly stressed out individual, you'd find a synergy of calming there. It doesn't sedate them, it doesn't put them out, they aren't stumbling around. They just chill. And usually they just chill nicely like this until you arouse them and they go, "Oh, what's going on?" You know?
Which would be fantastic in a boarding kennel to just
Terrific.
have them
Yes,
relax.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome, Rob. I can't
Been
thank you
fun.
enough. And whoops, sorry.
Mm.
Everybody ignore the spammers that have made their way into the comment section.
Yeah, they're
Um,
everywhere, aren't they?
they're everywhere. We'll delete them after. Don't buy their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's crazy. Welcome to the world of social media.
Yeah.
So, Rob, I am so looking forward to seeing you at the Healthy Dog Expo,
Yeah, me too.
April 5th through 7th. Guys, if you're watching this live or after, healthydogexpo.com for your tickets. Once in a lifetime opportunity to learn from a truly amazing group of people. And possibly, if we're lucky, a book signing with Dr. Silver.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah, just the self-publishing route is challenging, but you can do it.
I've got a good team. I'm
You've got
pretty
a good
happy with
team,
my team.
and the tech glitches can be overcome.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you again. I will be back next Wednesday with the folks from Oncotech who are going to help us learn about detecting cancer early.
That's a cool test. I'm starting to
You're
carry it on
using
my
it too.
website. Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, we're all excited about it. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you guys. Have yourselves a fabulous weekend. Bye for now.